Welcome to Insightful Gaming. Today, I'm going to be sharing one of my favorite builds in Diablo. This build is built around bleeding damage. It's not only exciting, but super lethal as well. With our setup, it dishes out insane damage to solo targets and enemy mobs alike. Our survival odds are sky high due to massive durability. This is great for leveling, and you can continue using this in the end game. Bosses and tough opponents are a piece of cake to squash. All thanks to our build, which is a mix and match of our skills, passives, aspects that is optimized for survivability and insane bleed damage. Enough rambling. If you got a kick out of this loadout and found it useful, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, drop us a comment, and hit that subscribe button for more wicked gaming content. Let's get into the build. First up, let's break down the badass skill set we're using in this build. Starting off, we have Flay. Think of Flay as your fury fuel pump. As your attack speed amps up, this bad boy rakes in damage on all the enemies in front of you, filling up your fury tank based on the pain you dish out. It's perfect for kicking off a brawl and getting that fury meter ready to drop a Rend bomb. Speaking of Rend, here comes our star player. This is our bread and butter damage dealer in this Rend build. It bleeds enemies out over time, making it a top-notch pick for laying down the pain on bunched up foes or targets you've just stunned. Then we have Rallying Cry. This skill juices up your fury and damage output. It's your lifeline while you're busy racking up fury or laying waste with Rend. Next up, meet Death Blow. This skill is all about dishing out big damage. Its damage scales with your fury, so the angrier you are, the harder it hits. Steel Grasp is our next skill. It's a fantastic crowd control skill, pulling your enemies towards you and setting them up for some sweet Rend damage. Last but not least, we have Wrath of the Berserker. This skill transforms you into an unstoppable force on the battlefield. Not only does it make you immune to control effects, but it also ramps up your damage and attack speed. If you need to shred a formidable enemy or survive a tight spot, just pop your Berserker Wrath and watch your foes fall. It's time to break down this killer arsenal system we're loading up for our character. First off, we got the Walking Arsenal, a gnarly passive skill. This beast is all about your weapon flipping finesse, dishing out fat damage buffs every time you switch weapons during a brawl. If you're new to the game, this might sound like a wild game of hot potato, but trust me, it's epic. Now about the arsenal system. This wicked mechanic lets you map your favorite weapons to different skills. It's like having a speed dial for your arsenal of doom. The key here is keeping your walking arsenal buff active and kicking. To properly set up your arsenal system, start with two-handed slashing for Rend, dual-wielded for Flay, and wrap it up with two-handed bludgeoning for Death Blow and Steel Grasp. With this, you'll be dealing a world of hurt with Rend, revving up your fury with Flay, and controlling the crowd with Death Blow and Steel Grasp. Mastering Walking Arsenal might take a sec. Don't freak if you mess up at first. Just keep grinding and you'll be a pro in no time. The Walking Arsenal skill really packs a punch and will take your Barbarian build to a whole new level. Follow these tips, max out your damage, and leave your enemies shaking in their boots. Next, let's break down the technique slot. For this build, we're choosing the two-handed sword expertise. First off, it slaps your enemies with an extra 20% bleed damage dealt over a grueling 5 seconds. It's like adding a spicy kick to your strikes. Then, each time you send an enemy packing, your bleeding damage ramps up by 30% for 5 seconds. Think of it like a victory roar that sends chills down your enemy's spines. Remember, your technique slot is like that trusty teammate who's always got your six. No matter what weapon you're holding, once you've chosen your bonus, it's stuck to you like glue. So, gear up and let your two-handed sword expertise do its thing. Next up, let's break down and get to know the nuts and bolts of the Rend Barbarian build. There are 3 big deal mechanics at play here: Fury, Bleed, and critical hits. Think of Fury as your energy drink. It's what makes your skills tick. You can fill up your Fury meter by landing hits on enemies or by using certain skills. Now, onto Bleed. This is where the Rend skill comes in handy, causing a wicked damage over time effect that slowly drains your enemy's health. The game plan for Rend Barbarian is simple. Fill up Fury, slap on Bleed, and then kick back and watch your enemies go down. To charge up Fury, attack enemies, or use special skills like Flay, Rallying Cry, and Furious Impulse. It's all about getting that Fury meter full. Once you're all charged up, let loose the Rend skill to stick a nasty bleed on your enemies. As your enemies start to bleed, they'll lose health over time. This gives you a perfect window to deal extra damage with other skills like Death Blow and Steel Grasp. But hey, remember that becoming a master at the Rend Barbarian build doesn't happen in a snap. If you hit a rough patch, just shake it off and jump back in. Keep at it, and you'll soon be the nightmare of every mob in the game. With the Rend Barbarian, you won't be following a set pattern of rotation. The Walking Arsenal perk keeps things spicy and changes up your strategy. This perk tweaks which skills you use based on their remaining time. Also, you'll want to be in Berserk mode often, but don't stress, it'll come naturally as you juggle your Walking Arsenal. Here's a more chilled out breakdown of your damage steps. If your Fury meter is cranked up to the max and a boss battle is looming, get your Wrath of the Berserker prepped. Next, turn on your Walking Arsenal for your first weapon set, probably your two-handed bludgeoning. Start the brawl with a death blow instead of a steel grasp, but only if it'll wipe out an enemy and reset the timer. Use your steel grasp to snag and single out one bad guy. Time to fire up Walking Arsenal for your second weapon set. If your Fury meter is full, let loose a Rend, but if it's low, go for a Flay. Now kickstart Walking Arsenal for your last weapon set. Remember to replay previous steps whenever one of the effects is about to run out. Use Death Blow to keep your Berserk going, and if Death Blow is on cooldown, use Steel Grasp instead. When your Fury meter is high, use your Rend, and if you are running low on Fury, use Flay until you've charged up enough for another Rend. Quick tip about using Wrath of the Berserker. The Supreme version turns it into a frenzy of generating and using Fury as fast as you can. The Prime version will turbocharge your Fury generation, so be sure to keep it from maxing out by using Rend a bit more often. Now, let's go over our talent tree. We are going to put points into Flay, next put points into Enhanced Flay, which is a 10% change to make the enemy vulnerable for 2 seconds. This is double when you are using two-handed weapon. Next, we are going to pick Battle Flay for the 10% increased bleeding damage. Next, let's talk about core skills. We are going to pick Rend, then Enhanced Rend, which will help extend our duration of vulnerable on enemies for 2 seconds. Next, we are going to pick Violent Rend, which will deal 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Next, for our defensive skills. First, we are using Rallying Cry for increased movement speed and Fury generation for us and our allies. Next, we are using Enhanced Rallying Cry for that sweet Unstoppable buff, where you will be immune to stuns and other crowd control effects. Finally, we are using Tactical Rallying Cry for additional Fury generation. Next, for our passives, we are using Imposing Presence for 5% additional maximum life, and we are also using Martial Vigor for damage reduction against elites. Next, for our brawling skill, we are picking 2 passives. First one is Aggressive Resistance for 3% damage reduction while berserking. Next, we are using Prolific Fury, which increases our Fury generation by 6% while you are berserking. Next up, let's talk about our weapon master kills. First up, we are using Death Blow, which is an amazing skill because it does 120% damage to enemies in front of you, and if you kill an enemy, its cooldown is reset. In right situation, you can spam this ability, it is amazing. Next up, we are using Enhanced Death Blow for the increased 100% damage to bosses, and we are using Warrior's Death Blow, giving us additional free seconds on Berserking buff. Next, we are using Steel Grasp, which throws a trio of chains dealing 23% damage and pulled in enemies. This is great for bringing targets closer to you so you can bleed them up. Next, we are using Enhanced Steel Grasp, which also makes the enemies vulnerable for 2.5 seconds. Next, we are using Fighter's Steel Grasp, giving you Berserking for 2 seconds. Next, we are using Hamstring, where your bleeding effects slow enemies down, and we are also using Cut to the Bone. Your bleeding effects now deal 6% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Finally, on this skill tree, we are using Pit Fighter. You deal increased damage to close enemies and gain distant damage reduction. Next, let's discuss our ultimate skill tree. We are using Wrath of the Berserker, Prime Wrath of the Berserker, which helps you gain additional movement speed and increased Fury generation. Next, we are also using Supreme Wrath of the Berserker. While Wrath of the Berserker is active, every 50% Fury you spend increases Berserker's damage bonus by 25%. Next, for our passives, we are using Tempered Fury, increasing your max Fury by 3. We are also using Invigorating Fury, which heals 3% of your maximum life for each 100 Fury spent. We are also using Furious Impulse. Each time you swap weapons, you gain 2 Fury. Next, we are using Wallop. Your skills using bludgeoning weapons deal 5% increased damage if the enemy is stunned or vulnerable. We are also using Concussion. Skills using bludgeoning weapons have a 10% chance to stun enemies for 3 seconds, or up to 15% chance when using two-handed weapon. Finally, for our key passes, we are using Walking Arsenal passive. It's a major key to our build. Next up, let's go over the Paragon board, which comes into play when you reach level 50. On this board, various nodes give you different perks. The normal and magic nodes offer small stat boosts, but the big deals are the rare nodes, glyph sockets, and legendary nodes. They give powerful, unique bonuses. As you make your way towards glyph sockets and legendary nodes, focus on increasing damage, strength, resistances, and life from the regular nodes. If a rare node is within 5 nodes from your goal, go for it. But be cautious with your rare glyphs. Adding them to glyph sockets might not be worth it until you have more points to enhance their effects. So you can skip glyph sockets at first and add them later when you have more points. Now, let's look at the most important legendary nodes and rare glyphs for the Rend Barbarian build. Keep in mind, this is based on you meeting the stat requirements for rare glyphs and their extra bonuses. Blood Rage. Each time you defeat a bleeding enemy, you have a 10% chance of triggering Berserking for 5 seconds. It's a nice reward. Hemorrhage. Enemies who have been bleeding for 3 seconds or more take 12% extra damage from you. Decimator. Your two-handed hits have an 8% chance of making enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. Weapon Master. It boosts the physical damage and damage reduction effects of Paragon nodes within its area by 30%. If you meet its extra bonus requirement, using a Weapon Mastery skill reduces another Weapon Mastery skill's cooldown by 2 seconds. Disembowel. For every 5 willpower points you gather within its area, you get a 1.5% increase in bleeding damage. Its bonus. Defeating a bleeding enemy gives you a 10% chance to reduce your non-ultimate active cooldowns by 1 second. Imbibber. Gather 5 willpower points in its area, and your damage increases by 1.84% when you're full health. Plus, you gain 30% increased healing from potions if you meet its bonus requirement. Ire. For every 5 strength points within its area, you deal 1.5% extra damage while berserking. You also get a 10% reduction in damage from powerful enemies while berserking if you meet its extra bonus requirement. Exploit. Gather 5 dexterity points within its area, and your damage against vulnerable targets increases by 1.5%. Its bonus. Your attack makes enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds, a move you can use once every 20 seconds per enemy. Mortal Draw. For every 5 dexterity points in its area, your weapon switching skills deal 3.505% extra damage. The bonus is great, an 18% chance for your swap weapon skills damage to be a critical hit. Remember, the Paragon board is all about carefully choosing nodes and managing glyphs. So plan your path, select your perks, and become the ultimate barbarian warrior. Now, let's talk about the mighty aspects. The right gear is crucial to any build, and in the case of a Rend Barbarian, it's no different. The use of powerful aspects tied to each gear slot significantly enhances the strength and performance of this build. Here's a comprehensive breakdown of the gear and their aspects you need to consider for this build. Two-handed weapon. You want to equip your two-handed weapon with one of 2 powerful aspects. Firstly, the Skullbreaker's aspect ensures that when you stun a bleeding enemy, they take an extra bleeding damage as physical damage. Secondly, the aspect of Berserk Ripping inflicts additional bleeding damage over 5 seconds whenever you deal direct damage while berserking. For our amulet, the Edgemaster's aspect comes in handy, increasing your skill damage up to 20% depending on the availability of your primary resource. This aspect works best when your resource is full. In the first ring slot, consider the aspect of the Umbral, which allows you to restore primary resource when you control a crowd of enemies. For our one-handed weapon or ring #2, there are 3 aspects to consider for this slot. The aspect of Encroaching Wrath boosts your next weapon mastery skills damage after spending 100 Fury. The aspect of the Relentless Arms Master provides an increase in Fury generation when all damage bonuses from the Walking Arsenal key passive are active. The Rapid aspect gives your basic skills an attack speed boost. Chest or pants could benefit from either the Iron Blood aspect or the aspect of Might. The former provides damage reduction for each nearby bleeding enemy, while the latter grants damage reduction after using basic skills. On the helm slot, the Leoparder aspect is a smart pick for your helm, providing an increased lucky hit chance when all damage bonuses from the Walking Arsenal key passive are active. For our gloves, equip your gloves with the Weapon Master's aspect to give your weapon mastery skills an extra charge and increase the chance to stun enemies with a lucky hit. Lastly, for our boots, consider the aspect of Anemia for your boots. This aspect provides a chance to stun bleeding enemies with a lucky hit from direct damage. The strength of your Rend Barbarian build lies in the strategic selection of gear and aspects. Utilizing this guide, you can equip your character with a combination of aspects that amplify your damage output, enhance crowd control, and boost your survivability. Make sure to pair your gear effectively to enjoy the full extent of these benefits. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this build and found it helpful, don't forget to smash that like button, drop comment below, and subscribe to our channel for more exhilarating builds and gaming content. Thanks for watching, and have a fantastic rest of your week.